So a brief overview of the agenda. This agenda is divided in 3 sections. First of all, we will start with a keynote address from a member from the European Commission, from HaDEA. Then we will go through the case studies of 4 projects: CLIMOS, Planet for Health, SESA, and REGILIENCE, that they will showcase all the challenges, opportunities, and success stories with the stakeholder engagement. And finally, we will go through a roundtable of discussions. We will ask different questions to the participants, and they will discuss on their experiences. Before we start our webinar, I would like to invite you to take your phones and scan the QR code that is going to appear on the screen very soon. I also leave here the link so you can see it. So this is will take you to Slido, and you can interact with us. First, we can see the QR code pool that is already open. So you can feel free to drop any questions that you have at any point. It will be open throughout the whole session. And you can also upvote the questions that you like the most. So we will make sure to address the most relevant ones first. So for now, we can warm up a little bit with a quick activity, and we would like to know you a little bit more. So in one word, we would like to know what do you expect from this webinar. So you can go ahead and type it on a slide, or we can see all the answers, how they come up on the screen. I'll leave maybe 1 minute. Awareness, okay. Engagement, yes. Management, networking opportunities, knowledge, examples, yes. Ideas, practical tips, okay, yes. Okay, so it looks like you are in the correct webinar, because this is our objectives as well, to give you practical tips, lessons learned, knowledge, so you can implement this session and all this information within your innovative projects. Nice. So we can keep this open. You can keep typing. Let's go to the next question, which we would like to know, where are you connecting from? What country do you come from? Okay, now it's active. It was closed before. UK and Portugal, all right. Poland, Spain, France, Czech Republic, Croatia, Poland and Portugal. Very good. Okay, perfect. There are a lot of countries, so very well, because this webinar, it features partners from all across Europe, which is perfect. So very, very good. Good to know. Thank you for participating. So yes, just let you know, we keep a Slido open, so drop your questions and we will address them towards the end of the webinar. So, okay, let's get started. We can start with the keynote address. The speaker is Nerea Aizpurua. She is the project officer in the European Commission from Health and Digital Executive Agency, HaDEA. And she will be presenting a ponex on a HaDEA perspective on stakeholder engagement for climate and health impact. So welcome, Nerea, and thank you for being with us.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today at this workshop. As I was introduced, I'm a project officer in the Health and Digital Executive Agency in the Commission, and I was previously working in digital research and innovation in the Climate and Planetary Boundaries unit as a background and environmental scientist. So just to mention next, that HaDEA implements European programs and initiatives on behalf of the European Commission. We are managing projects that are related to health, digital, food, industry, and space. Just for you to understand, normally I manage an overall number of projects that runs around 22 projects with an overall budget of maybe 150 million. So this is the volume of projects that I'm managing. So as a project officer, I see at first time and every day how crucial is the effective stakeholder engagement for climate and health, but also for other Green Deal initiatives. So when we talk about innovation, especially in the context of the EU-funded project, it's easy to get caught by the technological advancements and the new solution. But the truth is the most brilliant innovation can fail if they don't truly meet the needs of the people that they are designed to serve. So this is where our stakeholder come to connect this gap between the research and lab to the live reality. Next. So as a HaDEA, we manage a wide range of projects that aims to tackle some of the most pressing challenges of our time, like climate change, but also to the public health crisis. So these projects are ambitious, they are complex, and often touch the life of millions across Europe, but also beyond. So to ensure their success, we cannot simply operate in isolation. So think, for example, that a climate adaptation tool that is developed in a lab might be significantly really sound, but if it doesn't consider the specific vulnerabilities of a rural community or the operational realities of local governments, the impact will be limited. Also, similarly, for example, with new digital health solutions are developed, no matter how advanced they are, but they won't achieve its full potential if they are not user-friendly with the patient, or they are not integrated in the healthcare system, or they are not trusted by medical professionals. So this is the gap between the innovation and practical application that the stakeholder engagement is connected. So with the active collaboration of all relevant parties, from citizens, local authorities, communities, to industry, policymakers, researchers, and civil society organizations, our solution they have the risk to be disconnected. So this disconnection, as we know, can lead to the death valley for many problems in development that could otherwise solve real world challenges. So this is fundamental for EU success projects, this stakeholder engagement. Next, please. So what we aim for collaboration to maximize the impact, especially because we are talking about EU funding. So from the HaDEA perspective, this engagement is not just the best practice, but it's a fundamental pillar of successful project design and implementation. So we really encourage, and we also, as you know, we force to you. We start in some cases, I put the example of the climate health clusters. So we force you to work together. And we encourage, in many cases, regard all the funded project to embed in a robust stakeholder engagement strategy from the very beginning. And we try to follow it up as much as we can. So why we think that this is important? So why? Because it helps to better decision making. When diverse perspectives are heard, decisions are more informed, they are more balanced, and they are more relevant, because they improve the outcome. So solutions co-created with a stakeholder are more likely to be adopted, are sustained, and to deliver tangible benefits. And finally, the long-term success and sustainability. So projects that generally involve stakeholders builds ownership, trust, and resilience, which are essential for the lasting impact. So we have seen through the lifetime of the last 3 years that we have this agenda was set up, we have seen inspiring example across the portfolios, and also the Commission. I will present later on one example that has been quite successful. Next, please. So I hear today some examples for actions for stakeholders. So I see that today this session is supported by over 20 EU-funded projects. Each of you is addressing critical challenges related to the Green Deal. So these projects, as I hope also today to learn, you are demonstrating the power of the stakeholder engagement in diverse activities. You have this within these 20 projects, there is climate and environment. So you are working to develop climate resilience strategies, sustainable rural development models, but also innovative environment solutions by actively involve local communities, local authorities, and industry stakeholders. We have also a project dealing with health and well-being. It's a prime example of how a stakeholder engagement can improve public health outcomes by incorporating patient feedback and healthcare professional insight into the design of the health solutions. I saw also agriculture and food projects that are transforming the agriculture and food sector by engaging farmers, consumers, and policy makers to develop sustainable and equitable food system. I saw also industry and circular economy projects that are driving the transition to a circular economy by involving businesses, researchers, and consumers in developing of innovative and sustainable industrial processes. I saw also industry and connectivity projects improving this both by engaging with local communities and stakeholders to ensure that projects meet their specific needs and contribute to sustainable development. And I saw also there are mobility examples where sustainable mobility solutions that will benefit from the stakeholder engagement. So I wish that this is that you can contribute actively to the Green Deal with this stakeholder engagement. Next, please. So, as you participate in today's session and you heard about various experiences, I encourage you to think about how you can integrate this stakeholder engagement within your project. So here you have 5 principles that you can try to apply. So first will be to set up clear and effective structures for engagement. That means defining roles, responsibility, and dedicated resource for stakeholder interaction within your project. Identify all relevant stakeholders early and broadly. So go beyond the obvious. So who will be affected by your project, who has interest in its success, and who can contribute to the valuable insight. So the third will be the system. Establish clear communication system to facilitate the dialogue. Who will engage with them, to have regular websites, online platforms, surveys, one-to-one meeting. Choose the method that suits your stakeholder needs. The fourth will be the inclusion. Ensure inclusive and transparent involvement. Foster trust by being open about your objectives. Listen actively to the feedback, and so that the input is being used. So make sure that all voices are heard, especially the ones that are not traditionally well represented. Sustainability. So plan for sustainability engagement beyond the end of the project life cycle. Think about how the relationship and collaborative structures you build can contribute to achieve and support the long-term impact of your solution. So by embracing the power of the stakeholders, you can ensure that innovative projects, especially those that are funded by the EU, are not only scientifically excellent, but also truly responsible to the needs of the societies and capable to delivering a significant impact. So that would be five ideas of principles that are quite broad. But I will bring now next an example that maybe you know, that is an example that the Commission put in place we started several missions in the Commission. One example is the EU mission, Adaptation to Climate Change, that aim to boost Europe climate resilience. So by 2030, it seeks to support at least 150 regions and communities. This involves helping them to understand the risks, to develop plans and deploy innovative solutions for climate change impact as a part of the EU broader effort to tackle the climate change crisis. So The EU mission places stakeholder engagement at the heart of its approach. It's not just a theoretical concept, but it's a practical one. It's a comprehensive process that is actively supported and implemented. So, for example, the cornerstone or this is the mission implementation platform for adaptation and the do-it-yourself manual. So this resource provides hands-on guidance for regional and local authorities on how to engage the stakeholder effectively. It emphasized here 4 elements: communicating clearly, actively engaging, connecting stakeholders to decision maker, and enabling them to take action. So this manual is just, if you want to take a look, is public available. You have a video also that explains the stakeholder engagement. So this is an example that can be used. But also the mission use a regional adaptation supporting tool where stakeholder engagement is set up in every step of this cycle, from the initial assessment of the climate risks and vulnerabilities through the identification and selection of adaptation solution, and all the way to the implementation and monitoring of the adaptation action. So to ensure broader participation, the mission provides a wide range of engagement methods that this go beyond traditional meetings to include workshops, focus group, citizen assemblies, online platforms, surveys, and even more creative approaches like storytelling, art-based engagement, and community forums. So also recognizing that effective engagement requires resources, the EU provides financial support to regions and local authorities specifically for these activities. So this helps to overcome the common challenge of limited budget and person. So we can see that within the projects that are there are also several projects involved in this that are creating living labs to foster community involvement, citizen surveys, many other type of actions. So, well, finally, the mission facilitates a brilliant community of practice. These platforms allow regions and stakeholders to share the knowledge, learn from each other's experience, and build collaborative partnerships. So it's a space for mutual support and the chain of best practice in stakeholder engagement for climate adaptation. So I think that this is a good example. You know that we have other EU missions also that are working on the stakeholder engagement as an example. So that's a clear example that I see in the EU funded project that is quite representative. So next, if you want. So just to flag that all the EU funded project indicates the one in HaDEA. As you see, we accept, or all the beneficiaries are a wide broad stakeholders, industry, research institutes, academia, international organizations, NGOs, representatives of civil society. So all this can benefit from the EU funding. So we are creating this field to be open to all the representative and different stakeholders. Next. Well, as I finish more or less my note, I would like to also, as we have here different stakeholders, I would like to flag that the Commission we need your support also and your expertise. So I would like to invite you to, if you think that you have expertise in a specific field, to come and register in the European Commission to support us to assist in the evaluation of proposal of projects, and also to provide opinion and advice in a specific case. So we listen the different specialists that we need through the project, through the life of our project. So next, so I hope that you can stay in touch. We have different channels that you can communicate with us. Next, that's all. So thank you very much for listening to me. I'm open to respond to your questions and suggestions. Thank you.
We jump through the second part of the session, which are the case studies, challenges, opportunities, and success stories. Here we are gonna hear 4 project examples of how they, each of them, they reach their audience and how do they do stakeholder engagement, all the tools they use, all the tips that they will be helpful for you. So without more overdue, I would like to welcome to Carolina Pascaru. She's a success management manager. She's in charge of the work package in CLIMOS, that is with communication, exploitation, and local community activities. So welcome, Carolina.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Let's hope I don't lose my voice, but very nice to be here. Right, so I'll kickstart this with this part of the webinar with the CLIMOS project. So stakeholder engagement is extremely important for us, right? So before we jump into what we did and how we did our entire stakeholder engagement, the strategy behind it, let's talk about the CLIMOS project for just a second. So CLIMOS, it stands for Climate Monitoring and Decision Support Framework for Sandfly-Borne Diseases Detection and Mitigation with Cost, Benefit, and Climate Policy Measures. That's a mouthful, I am very aware, but let's just, take it slow. So what the project actually is doing, so CLIMOS actually aims at understanding and mitigating the spread of sandfly-borne diseases, which with the climate change, with the environmental changes that we've seen in the last couple of years, have become increasingly influenced. So we essentially in CLIMOS try to improve the knowledge of these environmental and socioeconomic drivers behind these sandfly-borne diseases and trying to reduce any uncertainties and clarify any uncertainties existing there, as well as try to provide accurate risk assessment and a better way of trying to predict the current state as well as the future distribution of these type of diseases. How are we aiming to do that? So we're aiming to develop this early warning system platform, how we call it, which will help visualize and improve the climate and health predictions, as well as infection risk forecasts and adaptation strategies. Within the CLIMOS project, the stakeholders are extremely important because we've been working and we still are working with an extremely wide range of stakeholders, including health professionals, surveillance bodies, general public, doctors, veterinarians, and so on, with the ultimate goal for all of us to come together and minimize the sandfly-borne disease exposure in Europe and prevent its spread across all the other regions. Now, why sandflies? Let me tell you, when I joined the project, I did the mistake of assuming that they're like, oh, they're mosquitoes or they're flies, right? Don't do that. I learned that the hard way. But sandflies are essentially important because they're vulnerable to climate change, right? So they can travel, they can adapt, right? And these are like tiny little insects found mostly in warm climates. And because of the climate change, right, they can travel around and they are carrying diseases such as leishmaniasis. So that's why we have them in the project. We try to look at the way that they behave. We look at the distribution of these vector species, as well as the infection incidence and the transmission of these diseases, right? So we analyze it from a very helicopter view. Yeah, and as I said, the reason why we're doing this is to develop this early warning system that can forecast changes in the fly species distribution, as well as the seasonality that we face with the climate change. We try to assess the risk of these sandfly-borne diseases and the transmission of them. We try to evaluate the socioeconomic impact of these diseases, as well as investigate and provide decision support for adaptation and mitigation measures. So that's just a little, we just, put our toe into the water, what CLIMOS is doing. But essentially the main point, what I'm trying to emphasize here is that stakeholder engagement is extremely important for us because it's not just an advocacy project, it's a project that looks into ways of preventing this, into ways of raising awareness about this, right? And trying to engage everyone at the local level in Europe and beyond Europe. So for us, as Sandra mentioned briefly, what we did and what we managed in Work Package 6, together with all the other partners within CLIMOS, is these local community activities. So these were essentially tailored and targeted workshops at the local level in order to try to gather feedback as well as inform the local communities about the sandfly-borne diseases and leishmaniasis and how they can be identified in humans and dogs and so on. So these community workshops were represented a collaborative way to co-create, meaning that we gathered the feedback and we took what we could in order to improve this early warning system platform to make sure that it's user-friendly, to make sure that it is visually appealing and it's visually informative as well, right? As well as empower the local voices in identifying any health risks and any climate impacts that we couldn't identify. These workshops were stakeholder-focused sessions, so they were tailored workshops with multiple key stakeholders. And within this tailored workshops, we had set of questions, we had a set of scenarios that we just went together with the stakeholders. And as I said, they provided their own inputs, and we've gathered and implemented them at a later stage. The reason why we're doing this, the outcome of this is, first of all, stakeholder empowerment. So trying to equip these communities and these professionals with the knowledge and the tools to make informed decisions. Policy integration, so essentially we're trying to co-create insights that we can gather and inform any policy recommendation and any socioeconomic risk assessments that can be produced at a later stage. Continuous feedback loop, again, trying to establish a communication channel to iterate and to improve the early warning system platform, and any other activities that we do within CLIMOS. And the last one would be to build resilience, so trying to strengthen the societal capacity to anticipate and to respond to any type of health threats that come through this type of diseases. So that was the strategy behind why we did that. Now within CLIMOS, we implemented this local community activities between November 2024 and April 2025 in 8 different countries. So Portugal, Turkey, Italy, Serbia, Spain, Israel, Croatia, and Slovenia. So there was multiple workshops in all these countries, and just to give an idea of the caliber, we had more than 200 participants engaged in these co-creation activities. And I've mentioned previously the diversity of this type of stakeholders, but we had their medical doctors, we had veterinarians, we had representatives from pharmaceutical industries, farmers, dog owners, hunters, and representatives from health ministries and agricultural ministries, right? So it was quite diverse, and it did spread across Europe. So I think we did manage to do a great job, but let me tell you why we did manage to do a great job. Because we had the strategy and guidelines in place, right? So we've provided, before the local community activities started, we've provided, together with the consortium and all the partners, we worked on this set of guidelines, which essentially is a step-by-step framework for the local partners to try to effectively organize and execute these co-creative workshops. Mainly it was to help them in ensuring that everyone keeps the cohesive way of doing these local workshops, right? So to be sure that they have the proper materials to promote, to be sure that they have the proper guidelines for ethical requirements, to be sure that they have we gave them even an agenda structure. Of course, they can obviously tailor it, but it was a step-by-step guide to help the local activity leaders to implement them. The core principle of the engagement strategy that we had in this guidelines was, first of all, the co-creation. I've mentioned this a couple of times. This is the core principle, and this is the reason why we did this, right? So this active involvement of the participants in shaping this early warning system platform through collecting knowledge, to listening to their concerns, and also addressing their expectations. Inclusivity, I've already mentioned the types of stakeholder that we had, but we went beyond just the types of stakeholder. We talk about inclusivity here in gender, in age, in cultural backgrounds, right? So we try to be as inclusive as possible when we included the stakeholders. Transparency and ethics, again, we had very clear communication about our data use, about the participant rights, about the way we gather feedback and the way they will be presented at the later stage, as well as we acknowledge that our project can be very ethically sensitive, so we required all the local partners to get this ethics approval on the local level and the national level, right? So we try to be as transparent as possible of everything that we're doing here. Adaptability. So we try to tailor our engagement methods to the content, so to the local level. So our content was tailored to the local level, and also it was in the local languages. All the workshops have been done in the local languages, in order, again, to try to make sure that we maximize relevance and we are as accessible as possible to everyone. At the same time, we had consistency across the co-creation activities, meaning that we had a set of questions that were all the same, that were all addressed in all the countries, right? To be sure that all the relevant that we gather, all the feedback that we gather is relevant and it is consistent across all the countries. So we ask the same questions to be sure that we address the same perspective. So that is the core idea of how we did this local activities. In terms of promotion, you cannot talk about engagement and stakeholders without properly promoting what you're doing, right? So we had multilingual flyers, as I said. Yeah, we had the CLIMOS project goals and objectives summarized in all the local languages. That was a huge help from all the partners from CLIMOS as well. We had invitation emails, very clear, very concise. They were all part of the guidelines that I've talked about previously. Again, they were translated as needed. They outlined the purpose, the logistics, and they were as clear as possible for all the invited parties. We had the project presentation. This was a standardized PowerPoint presentation, as I said, translated in their own local language, but it was standardized in the way that it all gave all the presentations at the local level gave an insight of the status, right, of sandfly-borne migration in the country, as well as the questions, as I said, the co-creation questions. So they were all consistent and they're all presented in a nice way in this standard PPT that we had. We also had an explainer. I'm so sorry. We also had an explainer video, so just trying to talk about what CLIMOS is, so we don't just, hi, we invite you to a webinar. No, this is what CLIMOS is doing. This is what we address. This is why it's relevant for you, right, for the target audience. So we try to make as understandable as possible our goals and our relevance to the participants. And the last, but not least, the protection guidelines. I've mentioned previously, we took it very seriously. So we had safety and protection guidelines that were shared with all the participants to ensure that they feel safe, sharing their insights, and they feel safe contributing to the outcomes of these local community workshops. In terms of challenges that we've encountered, I like to think that we've successfully overcame all the challenges, and we did. It is a success story in the end. But I'll quickly just tell you, of course, stakeholder availability. Always make sure that it's never easy, to be honest, to just align yourself to a schedule, right? So always make sure that you do that in advance. So always make sure that you check with, especially if you're dealing with professionals, right? Or like national health, not only, of course, general public as well, but it needs a lot of attention in order to try to figure out how you will invite, I don't know, 30, 20 people, right, in the same room for one day. Language and cultural diversity, you've seen how many countries. I've said 8 countries. They're all coming from a different background. So again, try to make sure that all the materials are as culturally appropriate, let's put it this way, as possible, and as significant and accessible as possible to everyone. Ethic approval delays. I think for us, this was a big challenge. But again, we acknowledge that our project is ethically sensitive, so we had to do it. The only problem is we realized way too late that we had to do it in advance, right? Because we had instances when we would had the workshop had to happen next week, but we couldn't organize it because we didn't have the ethical approval from the local authorities yet, right? And we couldn't do that because, again, we had to make sure that we comply with the ethical requirements. So yeah, obtaining this from the ethical committee, we did manage it in the end again, but definitely we needed to include this in the timeline, not just promotion, not just availability, but also this tiny little detail. And the last one was the accurate feedback collection. Again, trying to understand on the local level what would be the best way to collect the feedback, being it, recording the webinars or the workshops, right? Or being it through little post-its, right? Or being it through written exercises, right? So that was a way that, to be honest, it was left to the local partners to decide. And in the end, it was a very good exercise because everyone managed to report in perfectly. But we needed to think of a way of like, how do we make it as effectively as possible? So I think I am well over my time, but that would be it from a very much nutshell from CLIMOS. So thank you very much. I think, Sandra, back to you.
Okay, we can go to the next speakers, next two speakers. They come from the project Planet for Health. And I would like to welcome Katia Sosa. She's an F6S manager, project manager, and Karadi Wright. She is from the South African Medical Research Council. So welcome to this webinar, and thank you for being here. And I will leave the floor for you.
So hello everyone. My name is Katia Souza and I'm a project manager of F6S, as Sandra has explained, and I'm here today with Karadi Wright, which is part of the South African Medical Research Council. And we will present the work developed in the stakeholder engagement in Planet for Health. And firstly, I would like to just briefly introduce you to Planet for Health, which is a project that basically aims to translate science into policy with providing solutions and tools to support the policy making, but also raise awareness on sustainable practices. So it focuses on improving human, animal, and environmental health with exploring the links between the climate change, pollution, and public health. And similar to CLIMOS, as Carolina just explained, Planet for Health is also developing an early warning system that addresses real-world challenges for environmental and climate change, ensuring that these tools are practical and user-friendly, specifically to the needs in the various case studies. So we can have a quick look here and a brief look on our 4 case studies. So case study 1 is about the One Health effects of vector-borne diseases in the Iberian Peninsula, focusing particularly on animal health. And case study 2 focuses on the air pollution and health in South Africa. And we will take a deeper look here on the implementation of this case study and the stakeholder engagement practices with Karadi, which is leading the case study. So she will be the best one to guide you on this. Then we have case study 3, which is about food contamination from soil and water pollution in Central Europe, and the case study 4, which assembles all of the case studies because it focuses on mental well-being linked to the environmental and climate stressors of each case study. So as we have now an overview of what this project is about, we can understand that we have a variety of potential users as our target groups. And this varies between the climate and environmental policymakers, researchers and scientists, public healthcare, citizens, and so on. So due to this diversity of audience and different types of actions must be developed from our part. And I can give you an example on this because F6S is managing the communication and dissemination actions for this project. So we need to define which social networks will be used. So in the case of Planet for Health, we used the LinkedIn, for example, for addressing businesses and organizations, and Facebook for addressing interested individuals and the general public. So as we started a bit more than a year ago in January 2024, Planet for Health stakeholder engagement is still in the foundational phase. However, we have centered our actions in this 4 following points. So after identifying clearly who our stakeholders were, as I just mentioned, we need to define what type of approach we would use. And our approach so far was mainly through co-creation and participatory design actions to actively involve stakeholders from the initial phases throughout the development of the project. And I will explain a bit better in the point 4. And for the second point is the communication and outreach platforms, which we reinforce on using with the use of the Planet for Health website, newsletters, social media, for the public outreach, but also making sure that we have a clear communication to facilitate the comprehension of the terms, not being too technical with some kind of audience, and also the possible initiation of dialogue. And then we started to build our network. And this was established by the Planet for Health Stakeholder Network. And for this, we created a new survey registration form, which was quite simple. And we invited different stakeholders via direct email and through our communication channels. And this way, we collected all contacts that want to be part of the project and this network. And this enabled to reaching out directly to this community when we have upcoming events, opportunities to collaborate, and so on. And this happened with the co-creation workshop, which is the point 4. And during this last year, we had the opportunity to organize 3 online workshops for our stakeholders. And this was tailored to each case study, 1, 2, and 3. And each session was quite intense. It lasted around 2-3 hours and involved a total of around 90 participants. And these sessions were focused on an interactive co-creation exercise, as I mentioned previously, and where the stakeholders, they jointly identify the needs and expectations that they had and to develop the tools that meet these real world needs. So I believe that this was facilitated by using an interactive collaborative tools that allowed the stakeholders and the participants of these workshops to actually visualize, test, and contribute. So I can also share that one of our key collaboration tools was FigJam. And for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to work with this, it's an interactive online whiteboard. And it was great to enable a more dynamic and visual brainstorming and also the streamlining collaboration. So it was great. And concluding on my part, the collaborative engagement with stakeholders is very important approach for building the trust since the beginning of the project, and also taking into consideration that we will need the stakeholder support on the data sharing, enhancing, in the case of Planet for Health, policy impact, public awareness, knowledge exchange, and in the end, of course, ensuring that the project delivers sustainable and impactful results. And yeah, for my part, this is it. I will now give the floor to Cara D, which will take us to the case study 2 examples. So Cara D, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Katja. And good morning, everybody. It's lovely to see such great attendance today. And we are also joined by the co-investigator of the Planet for Health project, Dr. Susanna Blessig. So thank you so much, Susanna, for being with us today. So the case study that I'd like to speak about is our air pollution and health work that we are conducting in South Africa. And the reason why I think this case study is going to be a success is because of the history in the relationship building that we have put a lot of energy and effort into in the past years. So I'd like to share a story with you and explain how it is so important to nurture these relationships with your stakeholders. So for case study 2, looking at air pollution and health impacts in our 3 air pollution priority areas, our key major stakeholders are the National Air Quality Officer from the National Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, and from our National Department of Health, and that is our Environmental Health Directorate. What I want to speak to is the relationship that we have built over the years through, and it's, I suppose, through my role at the South African Medical Research Council. So several years ago, what we initiated at the South African Medical Research Council was I guess you could call it a breakfast or a brunch, where we would host both of these departments to ask them what are their most pressing issues or challenges. So it was a very informal meeting. There were no PowerPoint slides. It was a discussion. Everyone got to eat lovely food and have tea and coffee. And we got to hear from them the challenges that they faced in their everyday work. For example, the Department of Health, the Environmental Health Directorate at that time was struggling with rats in the city of Pretoria. Now, one might think, what have rats got to do with air quality? Well, unfortunately, the rats issue is related to waste. Waste not being collected and properly disposed of leads to an infestation of rats. And what people were then doing to try and eradicate the rats was burning the waste. And of course, that then contributed to air pollution emissions. So we began some research to better understand where these waste sites were. They're illegal waste sites, essentially to alleviate the air pollution, but also alleviate the rats. That's just one example of how we took it on as the South African Medical Research Council to try and support our Department of Health with an issue that was pressing on them. Similarly, for the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment regarding the air quality issues, they wanted to better understand the health impacts of air pollution in one of the priority areas that is heavily affected by coal-fired power station emissions. So they didn't have funding for this work. And by the way, neither did the Department of Health. We found the funding for this work. And we conducted a study to understand what the health impacts are, mortality, morbidity, but also congenital birth outcomes in one of these priority areas. We got funding from overseas, and we were able to then provide the evidence using observed data, both air quality as well as the health outcome data, to show that there are very real health risks for mortality, morbidity, especially in pneumonia for children under 5, and for the birth outcome, orofacial cleft lip and palate. In other words, exposure to pregnant women while the child is still in the womb can also affect the birth outcomes of their child. And in doing so, we were able to support both of these departments in a way that built trust. They got something that was useful for them. We got research outputs, but this also talked directly into the policy making and decision making that they had. So sorry, something happened there and I was muted. Both of these then spoke directly into their policy-making processes. So there's now a greater focus in the air quality management planning documents of the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment around the need to consider exposure to pregnant women and how best to inform pregnant women through the primary healthcare facilities that these are genuine risks. And for the Department of Environment, we were able to build into the heat health action guidelines, as well as the National Climate Change and Health Adaptation Plan, specific guidance around how to eliminate waste to reduce waste burning in high risk areas. And I think if we turn to the next slide, please, Katja, the reason why we were successful in building these relationships is we started with that meet and greet over those breakfasts and offered our support and assistance for what they needed to achieve for their goals. And we volunteered. So we put up our hands to say, we want to help you. We want to build a relationship with you so that ultimately we can improve the lives of people in our country. So we are going to gather the data and we're going to create the information, not just the data, create the information that you need that will then help you make these decision-making steps. And this really nurtured the relationship. So I've now got a very good one-on-one relationship with our air quality officer and our director for climate change and air quality in the Department of Health. So much so, and the last picture there is a WhatsApp symbol, is that they communicate with me on WhatsApp because they trust our work. They know that I'm available and always willing to support them when they need it. And I think that is one of the important aspects, trust, and it's been mentioned earlier, in nurturing these relationships between researchers and decisional policymakers. Thank you.
Awesome, Karadi and Katja, very interesting how rats are linked to air pollution according to what the people react towards them, and how to educate them is so important, and how you do it through co-creation. It's amazing. So great job, and thank you so much for showing this to us today. Okay, without more ado, we go through SESA projects, and I would like to welcome Natalia Cardona. She's an F6S project manager, and she will let us know how the lessons learned from the regional events. Welcome, Natalia.
My name is Natalia Cardona. I'm also a project manager at F6S, and for the past 4 years, I've been working with the SESA project, which is Smart Energy Solutions for Africa. So what is SESA? SESA is this collaborative project between the European Union and 9 African countries: Kenya, Ghana, South Africa, Malawi, Morocco, Namibia, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Nigeria. And we are a consortium of 30 partners, so quite big and quite impactful. The goal of SESA mainly is provide energy access technologies and cover these energy technologies into sustainable business models that can be deployed throughout the African continent. How do we do that? We have 3-tier strategy. Through local living labs and replication sites, we have facilitated co-development of scalable and replicable energy access innovations that we have tested, validated, and replicated throughout these 9 African countries that are associated to our project and beyond. So this 3-tier approach is we have a co-development test site, 2 of them in Kenya, in urban and rural areas, in Kisumu and Homa Bay counties. We have 4 validation sites in Ghana, Malawi, Morocco, and South Africa. And we also have 4 replication sites for the technologies in Namibia, Nigeria, Rwanda, and Tanzania. Then we do have lots of technologies in focus. We have e-mobility, circularity, productive use of energy solutions, second life batteries, water nexus, e-waste, solar mini grids, climate proofing, clean cooking, and energy efficiency initiatives. So as you see, we are trying to cover a very big and broad range of technologies that are deployed in different sites, both urban and rural, in these 9 African countries that are partners in our consortium. SESA has 5 principles of action. The first one is to inform, and how we do that and how we tackle it. We link this with some of our project's results, which it's the online toolbox, which is a website that hosts lots of resources and knowledge resources about the different types of technologies that we are developing or co-developing. We have resources on impact, on ideas for financing. We have mapping, and we do have lots of knowledge there. And with on a second stage, with an extensive capacity building program. Our second goal is to inspire through peer-to-peer exchange with Europe and across the different pilot sites, initiate the co-creation processes in the living labs, and through our policy roundtables and discussions to implement through seed funds that were assigned to several companies into open calls for local entrepreneurs. And we also have a startup incubator for local innovation, and to reach concrete and tangible impact through the integration of the innovations that were initiated and validated in the project into decision-making processes. So our stakeholders, well, given that SESA is trying to cover such a big range of technologies, and that we are also trying to cover a big geographical landscape, we needed to set up from the start a very strong stakeholder management strategy. We didn't just allocate this to a single work package or a single activity. This is a transversal objective that involves all work package leaders and all partners on the SESA consortium, so that we ensure that with this transversal approach that we had, that all of the diverse actors that needed to be engaged were contributing, and they could help us achieve impactful results. In a first approach, we categorize stakeholders by organizational type, but all of this as stakeholders can also be understood through their contribution to two overarching objectives of the project. One is enablers for solutions acceptability, and on the other side are enablers for scalability and impact. For the sake of this webinar, we will showcase them here, categorized by their organizational type, but some of them can be both enablers for acceptability of our solution, but also contributing to scalability and impact. We have three main categories, which is funding and governance bodies, then research and academia, and on a third level, industry and networks. So how did we approach our stakeholder management? We linked these different categories to a role that we wanted them to play in our project, and then the key contributions that they could provide. So for funding and governance bodies, the role established was fundamental for the activities regarding policy and regulatory frameworks that will enable the adoption and scalability of the renewable energy solutions that were deployed locally, and their key contributions related to the project outcomes were their inputs in the policy roadmaps and policy briefs that we have developed, reporting on business plans and models on all of the local living labs, and their inputs related to the companies that participated in our incubator program and were accelerated on the framework of SESA. For research and academia, the role that these type of stakeholders took was central to understanding the technical challenges from the different local living labs, specifically to each of the deployed technologies, the innovation mindset in developing this new solution or new potential business models or plans that could fit the local cultural, socioeconomic context, and building human capacity needed for this energy transition. Their key inputs were on the SESA toolbox, on the Sustainable Energy Solution Catalog, which is a catalog that contains 10 fact sheets about all of the different technologies that we have deployed during the project's lifetime, an online campus that provides free courses on 6 different types of technologies, capacity building activities, both online and local, and implementation and maintenance guides of these renewable energy solutions related to the different technologies deployed. And then for industry and networks, the role was vital for market deployment, for dissemination, and for practical application of the project outputs. So the key contribution was also transversal to all of the project results, but also in supporting these dissemination actions, and furthermore, to provide a pathway to sustainability after the project's lifetime. Here are some of the lessons learned that we have gathered throughout these 4 years of activities on the project, and we had 3 strategic pillars that we relied on. That we relied on when we were trying to engage with our different types of stakeholders. So for local activities on the deployment sites, we relied heavily on the consortium partners as local anchors. We have a very diverse consortium, both geographically and culturally, so their role and their active participation have been fundamental to ensure that there is actual local engagement. Luckily, we have a very collaborative consortium with lots of expertise that allowed us to properly deploy the engagement activities at a local level. With their established presence and their understanding of the local context, their networks, they enabled for us to have an effective communication, and that allowed us to build trust with the local communities impacted and allow the technical partners to tailor solutions that were actually impactful to the local context. Then on a second level of our second strategic pillar was organization of local events. We hosted 4 regional events that were crucial for engaging with local communities, local businesses, and policymakers at a local and regional level. We gather feedback and that we ensure that these solutions are both culturally and contextually appropriate to the needs of the communities impacted, and we also facilitated peer-to-peer learning and knowledge exchange at grassroots level. And our third pillar that we relied a lot on was creating strong synergies with Green Deal funded projects. Nerea also mentioned it at the beginning, and for us this was also fundamental. We have actively participated and fostered strong synergies between our sister projects, those funded under our same call, but also engaging actively in the activities proposed by the Green Deal Support Office that have allowed us to go beyond the channels already existing and the networks already existing that the partners brought into the consortium. This approach allowed us to avoid duplication of efforts, to maximize resource utilization. There were some exchanges at the research level between our sister projects, and this allowed us to ensure a more comprehensive and coordinated impact on the sustainable energy development. Some lessons learned, given that the project is now ending this year. So first, at a level of enablers for the solution acceptance, we thought it was fundamental to do proper community engagement and building trust. So how did we do that? We involved early the communities in the co-creation process and the demonstrations. We engage users and local communities in planning, decision-making, implementation, and awareness campaigns of the different technologies. And we highlight financial savings, environmental benefits, and ease of use of the different technologies which encourage behavioral change. Some technologies, especially at a rural level, are quite new. So there was lots of activities on capacity building and advocacy for uptake of the technologies developed under the framework of SESA. Then capacity building and local ownership. We provided continuous training that ensured technical independence, maintenance for solar irrigation, maintenance for cookstoves. So we developed guidelines and held local workshops that allowed the communities to gain this independence. This delivery of capacity building goal was to overcome the skepticism on clean energy solution, and we also focused a lot on women-led initiatives. For example, in 2 of our sites, we are developing clean cooking stoves or solutions related to clean cooking. So we reach out to local cooperatives in order for us to engage women, which in some of the contexts are the ones that take care of cooking the food for their families. So we wanted to engage them on a first level, and this allowed us to improve the adoption of the technologies deployed and, of course, ensure a sustainability of the uptake of the technologies. And here you have one of the examples of the local events that we held. This was on the framework of the SESA second regional event, which was hosted in Accra and Belabur in Ghana. And throughout all of these events where we launched or we went to host policy sessions, we also make sure that we visited the local places, both in rural and urban areas, and that we engaged the local community and made them feel heard, that their needs and the concerns were taken into account in the deployment of all of these technologies. Some other lessons learned, these are more related to the enablers of sustainability and impact on first level with policy and regulatory alignment. We ensured there was early engagement with different levels of government, which will allow us to ensure compliance and integration into national plans in the 9 countries where we were deploying energy solutions. We also took into account subsidies, carbon credits, and risk-sharing frameworks that would help the de-risking the innovation, for example, e-mobility insurance. Then in partnerships and sustainability, we collaborated with local and national governments, NGO, and the private sector, which will help us to strengthen the different ecosystems. We also collaborated closely with regulatory authorities, which is, as Carolina was mentioned earlier, quite necessary to secure approvals and navigate potential restrictions or risks that might present in the regulatory framework. And then we approach multi-stakeholder coalitions, for example, farmer cooperatives, to align with the projects, the project goals and product development. We also took very conscious care of having equity and inclusion as one of our flagships pillars. So we provided gender-sensitive designs, for example, the women-targeted stove training and inclusive business models, which one example is low-income leasing, to maximize the impact of the activities that we deployed on site. We also were quite lucky that this is a very strong consortium that has previously worked with communities outside of Europe. So part of consortium members are quite experienced organizations such as UN Habitat, UN Environment Program, and the offices of ICLEI, which provided lots of support on site in terms of reaching out and administrative activities. Here you have an example of our 3rd regional event, which was hosted in Rwanda. Here in the different regional events that SESA hosted, we tried to gather together several activities. So these events were more impactful. So we had policy dialogues, capacity building sessions, peer-to-peer exchanges, local visits to the development sites. And we also held and facilitated the Investment and Procure Summit, which allowed the companies on the acceleration program to pitch their solutions and try to engage with financiers to further develop their companies, which ensures that we also provide a pathway of sustainability to all of the companies that were engaged with the program and the companies that are part of our consortium. That would be all. I hope I'm not I didn't took too much time. If you want to know more about SESA, I invite you to engage with us through our channels, and I will give the floor to Sandra again.
Thank you so much, Natalia. Really interesting. It's crazy how much network SESA has and how much everybody gets involved. You inspire them so they feel ownership of these technologies and these stakeholder engagement. So congratulations, because it's really great work what you have done there. And
quite an impactful project. So I do encourage people that if you want to know more about the different solutions, just engage with SESA, because you can actually see the transformation in the local communities that they will benefit from the different deployment of the technologies.
Brilliant, so great. I'm so happy for you guys. Congrats. So let's go for the final presentation. This time is more focused on policy recommendations and how stakeholders engagement can reach EU regulators. So I would like to welcome Joanna Makotska. She is an F6S project manager, and she will introduce the work they are doing in the Resilience project. Welcome, Joanna.
So good morning, everyone. One more time. My name is Joanna, and I will introduce you to the last, but I hope not the least, project within the Greentech Innovation Synergy Channel, which is the Resilience, and the project is about the adaptation measures, about the climate adaptation, and which is also a support action for other 3 sister projects. So let me briefly introduce you what Resilience is doing, what we are doing with the wonderful team involved. So first of all, our basic goal is to understand and address the local and regional needs in terms of adaptation strategies. So first of all, we cooperate with the regions, we cooperate with the citizens, with the different stakeholders, and we try to grasp the challenges and barriers which actually are faced by the regional agencies in the process of development of adaptation strategies within the climate change. So we are sharing different information with them. We are providing different capacity trainings as well. So we try to support the regional authorities and agencies or other stakeholders, such as citizens, but also researchers and other project managers with a different climate-related projects, to actually provide them comprehensive knowledge about the regional resilience pathways. So not only through, I would say, through the trainings, but also with the team involvement in a help desk, but also a mentorship, and also a different means where we would like, when we are approaching different stakeholders. We also are connecting with different people and ideas dedicated to climate adaptation. We also are open to hear different perspectives and experiences, which we can then shape in a training and provide the comprehensive knowledge for a variety of stakeholders. We are closely cooperating with 7 focus regions where we support the co-design of regional resilience pathways, together with the authorities, with the agencies, and also with the stakeholders and people involved from those authorities within the climate adaptation strategies, to actually help them to be more trained, to be also help them to find the right solutions for the climate adaptation, and also replicate the good practices which are coming over from not only Resilience, not only from the sister projects, but from the various stakeholders within the climate adaptation scene. We also engage with the citizens to foster their awareness. So we work with the citizens through the sister projects, which deliver a certain use cases about the climate adaptation with different regions. But also we provide the various open seminars which are open to each citizen to learn about the climate adaptation, about the nature-based solutions or other related things which may increase the knowledge, but also which may educate the citizens to be more aware about the climate change. And we also are the cooperation and support action, which means that we closely cooperate with 3 innovation actions projects to reach out to the wider audience, to plan the actions together, but also to co-develop the tools and materials within the different languages, which is also the most important thing when we speak about the stakeholder engagement, that we would like to also reach out to the different citizens, different stakeholders who speak not only English, to be more accessible and be more, I would say, to actually minimize the gap between the policies and the stakeholders as well. When it comes to the key products of the Resilience, our project has been implemented for 48 months and we are just coming to the end. So many tools and solutions has been developed since the very beginning of the project. But starting from the latest one, we have developed the quick guides, for example, on natural hazards. The quick guides are actually the newest product, which is dedicated to the regions, which are yet in the process of the climate adaptation, but also to those who would like to start the climate adaptation, but they don't know where to start and which solutions to use. So we developed different quick guides, for example, on the flash floods, but also on droughts, to help regions to find the right solutions, to find them the way how they can tackle the climate adaptation and how they can start in order to be more climate adaptive related regions. Those quick guides are they're available in 10 different languages. So again, we try to reach out to stakeholders within the translations, so the knowledge is also accessible for them in their natural language. We have also developed other tools, which is the self-assessment tool for maladaptation, but also climate adaptation review. We have also several training sessions dedicated to the regions, but not only. They are also dedicated to the researchers, to the citizens, to people as we are as well, not only the researchers, but the regular citizens from different countries who would like to know more about the climate adaptation. So for example, next week we are going to host the open training session dedicated to nature-based solutions, which will introduce the topic of NBS, but also will show different use cases on natural-based solutions and different solutions tackled or implemented within the different countries and different regions. Also, we have developed the funding opportunities guide. It has been also a very interesting tool for which gathers a lot of funding information from the different sources. It has been integrated not only on the Resilience website, but now it is integrated on the MIP4Adapt platform, which is also a very comprehensive project in the platform which tackles the climate adaptation. And also, we have developed what I'm going to tell you in a minute in details. We have been also closely working with stakeholders such as citizens. So for example, we wanted to understand the public awareness of the climate adaptation in the region, in the Central Macedonia. So we started with the citizen survey to actually survey citizens within the region to assess their knowledge on the climate adaptation. And the last but not least, as we are cooperating closely with other projects, we also try to gather the knowledge together and actually spread this knowledge as wide as possible. So we also each quarter reveal, or we have the newsletter which is dedicated to the climate adaptation as well, where we also share very important information, opinion articles, and funding opportunities as well on the topic. When we speak about the stakeholder engagement, I think in the Resilience, I would like to present you two, very shortly, but I think two important approaches which we took in the Resilience. So first approach is the stakeholder engagement on the side of the regions. Since we are cooperating with different regions, our team is dedicated to train the regions, the local authorities, but also I think it gave us the view that each region within the climate adaptation, they will have a different needs, but the same different approaches. So we came up with this policy brief, which is a short leaflet in which you can actually download by scanning the QR code on, which is visible on the slide. But this policy brief, I think it's collects all the most important recommendations for regions, but not only, I think also for other projects which might be interested in the climate adaptation and how to engage the stakeholders. So first of all, the challenge which was set up before, after our work, but before the policy brief, is that I think it's nothing, let's say, innovative what I'm going to say, but the effective climate adaptation requires active engagement. So we have noticed via, let's say, supporting in different regions, but different sister projects, that the local authorities, they face the challenge. It is a real challenge for them to engage the stakeholders, engage the community, because they have simply limited resources, not only the financial ones, but also the right people who can actually do this part of the work. And it's nothing wrong with it, as the agencies or the regions, they are closer to the policies, but at some point, these policies should be brought closer to the citizens, which are the final, let's say, actor in this process. So the 4 EU-funded projects, we showcased different approaches to engage the communities and how to shape the climate resilience development pathways. So in this policy brief, you can find also the solutions and how we are supporting the case study regions in reaching out to the wider network by using the different approaches. And the main 4 recommendations which came from this policy brief is that the engagement strategies, it needs a tailored, there are both sides of it, that it needs the tailored solutions, which should be tailored to the local context of the region, and also the needs of the community. And on the other side, the local communities and regions, they might be struggling because there are a variety of the tools and a lot of tools on the market already on the different websites, such as Climate Adapt or Meet for Adapt, and also Path to Resilience. So there is a lot of different actors which are already providing tools for the climate adaptations. But we recommended that for the regions, our recommendation was that each tool needs to be adapted to the local context. So it is not like the one solution will fit all, but it needs to be adapted to the specific local needs, to the needs of communities. What is also important here within the stakeholder engagement in climate adaptation action is that it needs the long-term community engagement, meaning that this is not only one action at once, but it needs the continuous engagement by setting up or starting with the clear objectives, with the building the trust with the society, with the citizens, but also with other stakeholders, and effective communication to engage the stakeholders, to engage the citizens, to actually build the bridge between the regions, between the strategies they build, and between the citizens, which are the very important actors as well within the climate adaptation implementation measures. And also our 4th recommendation was that not only Resilience and 3 sister projects we are cooperating with, but also other EU-funded projects, they offer a lot of valuable resources and expertise. And the role, as I already explained, for example, we are doing it through the training to the local authorities. So I think this is also another side of the story, that EU-funded projects, they are a bridge to the society, to the citizens, to the stakeholders between the regional authorities. So our role as a project managers within climate adaptation project is that we are supporting the regions by providing them a training as well, but also we build this engagement and we connect with the stakeholders and with citizens. And last but not least, I would like to briefly tell you about Resilience actually work, about the stakeholder engagement on the other side, which is the closer engagement of the citizens of one region we are cooperating with, which is the Central Macedonia. So also imagine that, for example, the Central Macedonia is a region in Greece, and it has about 2 million people who live there right now, but also it's a region which is active in climate adaptation strategies, and also a region which is facing flooding, transport infrastructure challenges, and high energy consumptions. So we decided that we will go closer to the citizens to connect between the authorities and the citizens to actually at the end help on one side to understand how citizens are actually familiar with the topic related to the climate adaptation and climate risk connected to the region where they live, but also to at the end help or support the Central Macedonia Regional Fund, which is the main actor within the climate adaptation strategies within the region, to provide them with the outputs of the citizen survey, with the results, which will help them better shape their strategies. So I think this is also let's say win-win on double sides, that we closely collaborate with the local authorities, but also it will have the influence on a better shaped policies, where you can actually take into account the needs of the citizens from the regions and help them to co-create the policies based on real examples. Okay, that was it. Thank you very much.
It was a great presentation, and very important to bridge the gap between citizens and EU regulators and let them being heard, and also reach the most vulnerable ones with like translating everything into the local language and getting them involved. So it was awesome to hear that. So congratulations to the Resilience project. Okay, so we are a little bit behind the schedule, but that's okay, because now we are going to the round table of discussions and the questions. So I would like to welcome Daniela Nunes. She is a CLIMOS project manager from Nova Lisbon University. Pip Stewart is a speaker and Lesmaniasis Advocacy Network member. She is a citizen that participated in one of the local community activities in the CLIMOS projects. Natalia Cardona from SESA Projects and F6S project manager. Karadi Wright from South African Medical Research Council, and Joanna Makoska from Resilience Project and F6S project manager. So welcome to the roundtable of discussions. We have heard how to implement the stakeholder engagement, but we haven't actually heard from the stakeholder perspective how does this work, and how do they feel about participating in these activities. So I would like to start with Pip Stewart and asking the questions of like, how do you feel about participating in local community activities? What opportunities does it bring for you? And it will be anything that you will do differently.
Cool. Hi, Sandra, and thanks for the introduction. And for those of you that don't know who I am, and why should you, my name is Pip Stewart, and I am a leishmaniasis advocacy campaigner. My background is actually in journalism, so I'm a volunteer for LAN, the Leishmaniasis Advocacy Network, because I went on expedition to Guyana and came back with leishmaniasis. And I'd sort of like to start just by saying thank you, guys, because the work that you're doing is so massively important. Having had leishmaniasis, and I am well aware that as a Westerner, it is it is at the moment unusual to contract leishmaniasis. It's not necessarily endemic here at the moment. And I was so lucky that I could walk into London's Hospital Tropical Diseases and get treated for free. And the treatment was basically 3 months of very long, nasty treatment. So I'm here very much, and I was invited to talk about leishmaniasis from a patient's perspective. And in terms of your question, Sandra, I suppose the first thing I'd like to say is it was amazing to connect with people in the field because, as I say, my background's journalism. So a lot of what I've been doing is trying to tell stories and raise awareness from a patient's perspective. And it was really fascinating to have opportunity to talk to like veterinarians. And I remember speaking to one of your participants, and he was like, leishmaniasis is so well funded for dogs. And yet I'm like, but the treatment options for patients are outdated chemotherapy from the 1960s and 70s. How is it that the pharmaceutical companies, in terms of veterinary medicine, have done so well, and yet for human medicine, we're so behind? And so it was really amazing, both at wearing my hat as a journalist and also wearing my hat as a patient, to have these sorts of conversations facilitated by this stakeholder engagement. So I would say the other thing was, it's two things for me. It's awareness and connection, and just being aware of what CLIMOS is up to, what's happening on the ground. And I suppose one of the most fascinating things that I took away from it was the role of AI in being able to sort of analyze all these data sets and raise awareness that way. So yeah, they were the really cool things that I took from the project. Things that I would potentially improve upon is, like, right now we have an incredible body of people. You are all doing amazing things. And I'd love to know, like, what are the one things that you need help with, or what are the things that you need help with? What could other people help you with, and how can we better facilitate this amazing network that we've got? And I think I can't remember who it was. Someone mentioned about being on the WhatsApp group with local policy stakeholders. I mean, that's incredible. Like, what if, and I don't know about data protection or anything like that, but from our perspective at LAN, we've got a little WhatsApp group, and if anyone's got a question, just saying, can anyone help with this? I mean, you're pulling together incredible people. And I know we shared after our session, we all shared emails and gave consent for that to be shared. But I wonder if we could go further, or even before a session, you know, could you say who you are, what your key aim is, and what you most need help with? Plug that into AI and say, right, Sandra, you need to talk to Joanna. Joanna, you need to talk to Carity, and like start pairing it, because lots of people freaking hate networking. It's so awkward, isn't it? When you're in a room and you're like, I don't know what you do. I can see your name titles, but what does that mean in reality? And I guess put a human face on it. And the other thought I had was, I love what you're doing at a local level. This is incredible stuff. How do we make this more of a story? And I saw that, I think it was Planet for Health. They had that big article in National Geographic, or have I got that wrong? Maybe it wasn't. Yeah, that sort of thing. And I suppose, again, from a patient's perspective, we are constantly trying to push. This is a pre-take notice. And it's like, malaria had such a great campaign behind it, such a great public awareness campaign. Leishmaniasis is the second biggest parasitic killer after malaria, and yet most people in the global north have never heard of it. And again, I know it plays into the global inequality in healthcare and all the problems there, but I feel like you have a bunch of massively intelligent people in your like roster. How do we communicate this? How do we tell stories in a way that people are going to listen? And yeah, maybe bring a bit more out of that from the stakeholder meetings, because yeah, as I say, I was really blown away by the AI angle, just what you're doing there. And yeah, how can we utilize that and just raise awareness and put maybe a human face on it? And especially there's a very strong story with the whole climate change crisis as well. So yeah, I suppose improvement, I would say communication in terms of storytelling. And then, yeah, networking. How can we get better at pairing the people that need to be paired, and what we can offer in a very simple human way?
Awesome, Pip. Yeah, very interesting. Networking, closer networking is super cool. And using AI now is a tool that is there available. And yes, why not using it to bring people together? There are some platforms that kind of do that, but yeah, getting more focus on stakeholder engagements will be one priority. Cool. Thank you, Pip. Okay, so this one is general for everybody who has been implementing stakeholder engagement. So like Daniela, maybe we can start with you since you haven't speak yet. And then we can go through Karadi, Joanna, and Natalia. When you implemented a stakeholder engagement, what challenges did you encounter, and how did you reach your audience? How could you get in touch with them? And we have seen many examples, but in the practice, how did you do that?
Hi, good morning all, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's really great to hear all of these case studies and this sharing this knowledge. And it's truly important to these activities with the stakeholders. So in our case, for CLIMOS, we were the first country to do this stakeholder engagement with the local communities. And how did we engage? So we have, and this is the work that is being developed by our principal investigator, Carla Maya, and that she is also the coordinator for the CLIMOS project. And here in Portugal, we focused on, so we had 2 sessions. One was focused for the non-professionals, so in this case, dog owners and farmers. And the invitation was made through a direct contact because they were already stakeholders that our researcher Carla Meyer already knew, and then for for the second session we had the professionals. So we had public health professionals and veterinarians. In some cases, we followed the direct contact as well, using the network that we already knew, but also we contacted them and invited stakeholders through association, Veterinarian Portuguese Association. And we had 20 participants between the 2 sessions, and we provided all materials translated in Portuguese. So I think that this is really important as well. So this helps to communicate directly with the communities. And we are able to do this because of the efforts of F6S as well, because besides the presentation, so our session, as Carolina explained earlier, we have so Carla May initiated these activities with a presentation on the sandfly-borne diseases, emphasizing the canine and human leishmaniasis in Portugal. So this brings our participants closer to the issue that is being discussed. Then we also introduced what is an early warning system and what is CLIMOS objectives. And we had a moderation that was done by Maria Maya from KIT. She has a lot of expertise in this type of moderation, and we use the focus approach for these sessions. And why? Because this, we thought, given the number of participants, would encourage an open discussion, would help us to gather insights and to collect feedback. So we were I was taking notes throughout the sessions. We divided these co-creation activities into 3 parts: the reflection on what was presented, the functionalities and usability of the early warning system, and what an ideal scenario for the use and application of the early warning system for sandfly-borne diseases would be. In both sessions, they were actively involved. Most of the users, most of the participants already were aware of the impact specifically for canine leishmaniasis, but I think that what was good for this session was also to inform them of the impact of human leishmaniasis as well. They offered detailed insights, and actually we received then some feedback the next week of when the session happened. We received feedback from the public health professionals. So this shows that the stakeholders are really involved in these activities, and that it is really important to bring these activities to the local communities. And we also, so after our session, we had some interactive tools that was shown by Carolina during her presentation of the CLIMOS. So we had a 3D model of a female sandfly, we had a stereoscope and a microscope. And so the participants were able to explore the sandfly life cycle, and were also able to observe the Leishmania mastigotes. And they stayed after lunch and after dinner 1 hour or 2 hours interacting with these tools we brought. To respond to the main challenges, one of the main challenges were balancing voices. So when we have this focus group approach, sometimes it can be hard because we have more participants that are more active or more vocal. So Maria Maya was really good in ensuring that introvert stakeholders were also heard, and she was able to maintain a balanced discussion. And I think the other was the time. So we had 1 hour and a half specifically for the co-creation part of our session. And I think it would be beneficial to have more time for the session, because, as I said, the stakeholders and the participants, they were really vocal, and they were really engaging in the activity. And I think that if we had more time, we would be able to gather more valuable insights and feedback from them. So yeah.
Yes, Daniela, great. So yes, you also agree with Pipe. Network and active partners that they have these contacts are key to create this community building and reach the stakeholders. Awesome. What about you, Karati?
It's difficult to add to the exceptional examples that have been given. I want to maybe just give an example of maybe not a barrier, but a mistake. Learning from our mistakes when engaging with stakeholders is also really important. So what has already been mentioned by Daniela, the need for co-creation from inception is really important, and putting that time in and making sure that you really have your stakeholders as part of your project and process from the outcome. So I made a mistake once. Well, I made lots of mistakes, but in this particular instance, I made a mistake in that I had told my National Air Quality Officer that we were doing a study looking at the orofacial cleft lip and palate birth outcomes among children born to women living in the high-felt priority area in South Africa, heavily polluted area. And when we had the results finalized and they were written up in a manuscript and the manuscript was published, we did a press release because we were really astounded at what we found. We found that there were impacts, and it was the first study in South Africa that's ever shown a relationship between air pollution exposure and a birth outcome. My mistake was that I forgot to phone my National Air Quality Officer before we put the press release out to let her know that it was coming. So what happened was she saw the press release only when it was out, and already the journalists were calling her for a rebuttal on, well, what are you doing about it? this is happening in your priority area. You are responsible for the pollution here. What are you doing about it? And she was very upset with me, because if she had had the forewarning, she would have had something to say, and they had to really hurriedly put together a response. So I'll never, ever do that again. It's really important, if you've got findings coming out that are going to rustle the tail feathers of your stakeholders. Not that they are committed to the problem, but it's sometimes very difficult to move the machinery to make change through government. So better to inform them well in advance of things like press releases around controversial results.
Awesome. Yes, communication is key. Yes, that's so true. Great. Thank you so much, Karadi, for your input. Joanna, what do you would like to add? Say, what are your main uptakes and challenges when you had to do a stakeholder engagement in policy briefs and reach regulators?
Well, I think the major challenges is actually to reach out to stakeholders, right? Like in itself as an activity. But I think we can also find a couple ways how to tackle it. First of all, I think the major lesson learned from the resilience was that, except the policy brief, was that we translated our resources to the different languages. And I think this is the key. I think I can speak about myself, but also I think about the many people that we closed. We are closed in the loop that everyone speaks English, and I think we need to go beyond this loop to reach out to the different people, not only to researchers but also to the citizens from different countries. So the key lies in the translations to the national languages. And for example, what we did in the Resilience, we translate the resources using our team. We have different languages in the team. So we use the team, but there's many resources which can help you to translate the knowledge. And by translating it, you definitely can reach to the wider audience and have a bigger impact. Also within the citizen survey in Central Macedonia, what was important here that we actually did it in the national language, in Greek, because it only could have an impact on the region and also on the citizens. I would say also on the other side, within the policy briefs, I think this is also important to use the available resources provided by Horizon Europe, but not only. For the policy brief, we use the Horizon Booster, which helped us to shape this brief, to gather the knowledge, to put it in the right order. So I think also, this is also not to forget that there is many tools which are very important and which are very useful to create the impact.
Thank you, Joanna. Using the tools are very important, and we have seen a lot from Nerea's presentation with the Climate Adapt, Horizon Booster. These are tools that are available from the European Commission, to the tools from your network, which is also very important. I see, Natalia, you were agreeing with this. Would you like to say a few words about your challenges?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, for future projects, to all of us and all of the attendees, make sure that you save some resources to do translation, especially when you're working with vulnerable communities, impoverished communities. One of our stakeholders in specifically SESA were rural communities. So our way to communicate with them was through traditional media, radio, press. I think this is very important to keep in mind, given that all of our projects maybe work with people that don't have access to the internet or to online resources. That was one of the main lessons that we learned in SESA. That I think it could help us all in the future. And another lesson is when we're reaching out to certain types of stakeholders, building up on this do not rely on online channels, make calls, write letters if you want to engage with local governments at a very, very concrete regional level. Do not be afraid to reach out to them via telephone, via formal letters, because sometimes, following with what Karadi said, we made this mistake of maybe at the beginning relying too much on the online channels, and then after assessing that we were not reaching the expected impact, we made some correction activities, and we tried to go into a more traditional level with a very written radio spots and similar activities. So I think for me to highlight here, it's both translation, be able to communicate with people at a local level, be aware of their socioeconomic, cultural context, and then do not be afraid to use other tools beyond online tools, because not everyone has access to this.
Yes, so true, Natalia. Thank you so much. Leave nobody behind is one of the objectives from the Green Deal, and reach vulnerable people, which at the end, they are the ones that suffer more. And these tools are, they should include this population. So great advice from everybody. We are reaching the end, so I don't think we have very much time for questions. However, I would like to address one question from the public that it has been made through Slido, and it has been the most upvoted one. So the question is, how do you develop different engagement strategies per type of stakeholder? Maybe we can hear different opinions. We can start with Pip and continue with the same order. I know you don't create stakeholder engagement, but as somebody who has participated, how would you like to be engaged depending on your type of stakeholder?
I guess we're coming at it from very different outcomes that we want to meeting. Who are you? What do you want out of this, and how can we help? So from my perspective, it would be public engagement, spreading the message. And maybe if I knew that when I was coming, I could speak to X person, and that would be helpful. And maybe just a little bit of like preliminary information, because there's lots of different titles, and as just an ordinary participant, I'm still trying to grapple who does what in the space. So just sort of some clear signposting about who we are, what we want, and who might actually be useful to talk to, and maybe some clear reporting about what the participant might benefit from coming out of it, if you're trying to encourage people to join. I mean, I'll talk about leishmaniasis all day long because it's something I'm passionate about. But if you're busy and you've got lots of work on, you want bums in seats, don't you? So like, I guess giving people that incentive of this will benefit you because.
Awesome. Good communication and good objectives. That's awesome. Daniela.
So I do agree with Pip, and I was thinking about this, and for example, for our example, so we, as I mentioned, we had 2 sessions, 2 different profiles. So what interested the non-professionals, so the citizens, they were preoccupied how the disease could affect them, how could affect their families, how could affect their dogs. So this is a different type of communication for the compared to the professionals that are more interested on how they can, and in this case for the public health professionals, how can they help to create preventive measures and policies to protect the citizens. So I think it is important to try to communicate in a different way for this type of for different types of stakeholders. So I think it follows along what Pip mentioned.
Thank you so much, Daniela. Cara D, please.
I don't have anything to add. In the interest of time, I just think we've heard so many wonderful things. I don't want to put any more information out there. So nothing from me.
Great. Joanna, do you have a comment for this?
Yes, I think it's similar, but I will be short. Adjust the language to the stakeholder, and you will solve your challenges.
Natalia?
Yeah, just to close and very shortly, meet people face to face and actively listen to them. Go to the sites where you're developing your work and make people listen, actually actively listen to the people's needs and what they request and how this work is impacting them. That'll be all for me.
Great. So we have reached the end of the webinar. Great recommendations, just a summary, know how to reach your network, translate your materials, have active partners who know their community and involve the community to get ownership and a lot of networking. So really good recommendations. We will be posting this webinar for anybody who could not attend or who want to revise these great presentations. And just to finalize, thank you everybody who participated and attended this webinar. And I hope we can have very many more. Yeah, hopefully we'll see each other very soon.